Welcome to Podkey Daily News, your fast brief on AI pressure, conflict, and policy shifts. The biggest through line today is systems under strain. AI companies are cutting prices, governments are scrambling over rules, and from Colombia to Cuba to Congo, the human cost of weak capacity is getting harder to ignore. US AI companies have cut model prices by about 25% since mid-July, as customers test cheaper Chinese rivals, including DeepSeek and Moonshot. That matters because the price war is colliding with enormous spending on chips, data centers, and model development, so investors are now looking much harder for proof that these businesses can actually earn durable profits. Big tech is also borrowing in more currencies, including Swiss francs and pounds, to fund AI expansion, which is pushing up borrowing costs and crowding smaller credit markets. Around that build-out, the winners right now look more concrete. Cisco is benefiting from hyperscaler and security demand. Lenovo posted record revenue, and Apple is discussing a possible nine-figure content licensing budget for AI features. At the same time, AI executives, including Demis Hassabis, have reportedly discussed creating an independent safety body with governments and lab leaders. The tension is obvious. Companies want to avoid heavy-handed regulation, but they also want a big hand in writing the standards that will govern them. Labor. Congressman Ro Khanna is pushing an agentic AI tax, so companies replacing workers with AI would still contribute toward payroll taxes and health insurance, instead of getting a built-in tax advantage over hiring people. He is also tying AI growth to local control, with a proposed data center bill of rights that would require verified disclosures on water use, recycling, and utility impacts, and would give communities a real say over whether projects move forward. One more AI risk point. Researchers say major chatbots can dodge politically sensitive questions or drift into answers resembling Chinese state talking points, and they argue systems should disclose when answers reflect government-promoted narratives. U.S. companies are also facing a very practical cyber and hiring threat. Thousands of North Korean IT operatives have reportedly used stolen American identities and U.S. facilitators to land remote jobs. The FBI says some of those workers have hacked employers, and the broader scheme is estimated to have generated about $800 million for the regime. What to watch next is whether hiring controls tighten across tech and contractor-heavy sectors, because this is no longer a niche compliance problem. On trade, companies are collecting major refunds for Trump-era tariffs later ruled illegal by the Supreme Court. Apple reported nearly $2.2 billion, while Nike, FedEx, and Amazon got hundreds of millions, and Customs has received more than 250,000 refund claims. That is real money returning to large balance sheets, and it also shows how long legal uncertainty can linger after headline trade policy is announced. Meanwhile, despite conflict, disruption around the Strait of Hormuz after the start of the U.S. war in Iran, major shippers are showing resilience. Maersk raised full-year guidance and said it had recovered the higher costs, while Hapag-Lloyd cited strong Asian exports and better U.S. demand, even though it remains less profitable than last year. In Colombia, a major earthquake in the west has killed more than 260 people, left nearly 500 missing, and destroyed or damaged thousands of homes. Rescue teams around Cali were still working multiple collapse sites as survival windows narrowed, including one where signs of life were reportedly detected from a trapped 10-year-old boy. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Ebola outbreak has caused at least about 2,000 deaths and more than 4,000 confirmed cases since May. And Doctors Without Borders says the response is expanding more slowly than the outbreak itself. And in Haiti, a UN-backed multinational force has begun a major deployment beyond Port-au-Prince into Artibonite, where gangs have expanded into a key agricultural region after the earlier Kenyan-led mission struggled to contain them. 5 years after the Taliban returned, Afghan girls can attend school only through grade 6, while women remain blocked from universities and many jobs. Some families rely on clandestine schools and online classes, but for many girls without access, the practical alternatives are shrinking to home-based work, dependence on male intermediaries, early marriage, or permanent exclusion. In Ghana, an anti-LGBT bill passed Parliament and awaits the president's signature. It would criminalize identifying as gay and could impose up to 3 years in prison for people accused of promoting homosexuality, extending risk to allies as well. For gay Ghanaians, the reported impact is immediate: hiding, vetting every relationship for safety, leaving the country, and in some cases, giving up on the idea of ever returning home to live openly. Europe got a sharp warning on climate-linked infrastructure risk when Romania shut its Cernavoda nuclear plant, normally supplying about 20% of the country's electricity because low Danube water levels reduced cooling capacity. Hydropower was already weakened, so Romania had to prepare for costly imports, and Hungary's Pax plant was reportedly running at only a fraction of normal capacity as officials tried emergency water diversions. In the U.S., 2 separate oversight stories also stand out. Flock plans new safeguards after backlash and reports that police allegedly used its license plate surveillance system for stalking, a reminder that access controls matter as much as the cameras themselves. And Homeland Security plans to spend millions on contact-activated electric shock gloves for officers, even though intended uses were not clearly defined, which is exactly the kind of ambiguity that tends to create controversy later. Cuba's humanitarian situation is getting worse 7 months into a U.S. oil blockade, with blackouts lasting up to 20 hours a day or even several days, medicine shortages pushing people to black markets, and public anger rising as the government stages lavish official celebrations. On the U.S. military side, the USS Abraham Lincoln reportedly spent more than 250 days deployed in the Middle East, including more than 200 days without a port call. Families and some lawmakers describe a morale crisis tied to food, water, supply, and sanitation complaints, while the Navy disputes the severity of the conditions and says reviews found no increase in suicide attempts. And in criminal justice, executions rose from 25 in 2024 to 37 in 2025 across 11 states, with Florida driving a large share even as public support for the death penalty has fallen to its lowest moral acceptability level since the 1970s, and jury-issued death sentences remain far below 1990s levels. Venezuela's government and opposition made a rare joint demand for the release of about $4 billion in gold held by the Bank of England, arguing the money is urgently needed after recent earthquakes, though the legal fight over who can control it is far from settled. In Japan-Russia relations, Vladimir Putin's visit to Russian-held Iturup in the Kuril Islands drew a sharp protest from Tokyo and landed just before Japan's August 15 surrender anniversary, which made an old territorial dispute even more politically charged. And one small but useful science note: researchers at Imperial College London say their BioLoon, a modified natural rubber balloon, can fully biodegrade within 9 months, potentially reducing a major source of marine harm to seabirds if commercialization works. That's the brief for Podkey Daily News. The pressure points to watch are AI profits versus regulation, state capacity in crisis zones, and whether infrastructure and security systems get real oversight before the next failure forces it. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.